cultivating inclusive spaces, environments, and atmospheres within the walls of an organization means that you're dedicated to the state of or quality of being behind a cause, activity, or a general statement. My friends, you're committed to inclusion. And more organizational and corporate leaders are realizing the benefits of creating an inclusive culture with minimal effort. Let's take a moment to buttress what I just said with some statistical food for thought. According to my friends over at Gallup, 84% of Chief Human Resources Officers say that their organization's investment in DE&I initiatives are increasing. Meanwhile, the Chartered Professionals in Human Resources Canada report 81% of Canadian HR leaders believe senior company leaders need to support DE&I efforts. And finally, my friends over at Workday say that 78% of global HR leaders believe that DE&I initiatives have become more important than ever before. This, my friends, is good news from my friend Tiffany Castagno. She's an HR consultant who helps organizations and companies with elevating their culture and empowering people leaders and organizations to engage, involve, and enrich their cultures and commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion for all people of all abilities. She's focused on helping employers and organizations build employee brands that are sustainable, building systems that are focused on retention, equity, equality, and inclusion. She describes herself as a community builder focused on helping organizations amass the necessary social capital they also need to succeed. And Costanzo says it all starts with our ability to create and cultivate meaningful and long-lasting and enriching relationships. She's got more than 20 years of experience in the field of human resources. So, if you sit atop an organization's leadership chart, this is a conversation you can't afford to miss. And lucky for all of us, my conversation with Costanzo starts right now. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. So, Tiffany, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to talk to you about leadership, people, operations, and everything in between, my friend. Good morning and happy Friday to you.
Good morning. Thank you. Happy Friday.
Absolutely. And just before we dive into the nitty gritty of what you do, I'm curious to ask you, Tiffany, as we enter a new year, how are you defining prosperity in 2025?
Wow, starting out with a powerful question. I think it starts with self and self-care. I think that wealth and prosperity come from more than the financial space, right? And we have to be whole ourselves in order to feel like we can pay that forward to the rest of the world. So I'm defining it as pouring into self and health, and that then brings other wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I know that your day job helps you to empower people, leaders, and organizations to enhance their cultures and employee brands, my friend, and by building sustainable systems which are focused on engagement, retention, equality, and inclusion. So, tell me about your work, my friend, and what makes it so fabulous.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to respond to that, and also for we don't often get called fabulous in HR and culture work, specifically HR. And so for me, it's really about supporting leaders to build organizations that have a vision toward impacting people first. And that means understanding, it means a lot of asking questions, it means a lot of stripping down our egos as leaders to really understand that our teams are the bread and butter, so to speak, of the organization, which means we have to allow them to come forward and flourish. And we as leaders have to step back, know what we don't know, get our education, get coaching, and pour into ourselves so that we can be the leaders that our teams need. And for me, it means like not just as an HR practitioner coming in, sitting down, buttoned up, giving the answer, but really allowing and co-creating with clients so they can understand and I can bring just some guidance toward them.
Yeah, Tiffany, how important is it, do you think, for employers to admit when they don't have all the answers and they can seek out the assistance of the people who work underneath them? How important do you think collaboration is, and the admission sometimes of leaders when they don't have all the answers? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I appreciate that as well, Kevin. I think it's hard as humans sometimes to admit that we're wrong. And, a lot of folks, if you're like me and you suffer from this, post-perfectionism world, it's really hard sometimes. And sometimes the work environments themselves want to drive productivity over the person, want to make sure we have all our statistics and have all the things. And that, can put a lot of pressure on folks and it can make people not feel safe to speak up. I think for leaders, really it's about understanding that we don't have to have all the answers. So, first of all, you've now gotten the gift of taking that pressure off of yourself. We put so much pressure on ourselves and then on our teams, and it really does impede the work. One of my partners talks about the power of the pause, and there is such great things that come from slowing down. I know this from 4 rounds of burnout. A lot of our leaders are in burnout today. And so we really just can do ourselves a favor by just even understanding that we're not required to know it all. And whoever told you that was wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tiffany, you also said that it's important for leaders to rethink their approaches rather to addressing a couple of questions in terms of why there are employees leaving, how can they improve, and do all employers feel included and equally represented, my friend? So how can we frame our thinking around these questions to become better leaders, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think that it requires confidence. It requires us to really do a lot of reflection and introspection. And even there, we don't have to do that work alone. I love a good curious question, such as the ones that you're asking in our conversation today. And that really does open up doors to allow us to take that step back to understand what is happening in the environment, to whether it's a survey or you're sitting down in a one-on-one with an employee, or you're meeting as a leadership team. Getting curious is really our friend and exploring what is going on in the environment, because what happens is we work in such a fast-paced world, and people often are just jumping to conclusions, making assumptions versus let's explore. You can do things like 5 whys until you get to the root of something, but questions are so powerful and can elicit such amazing responses and outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to tell you, Tiffany, you brought me back to my first lesson in journalism school because that's the first lesson they teach you in journalism school, the five whys, right? We
Oh,
have to be able to answer those questions, right?
yeah. Thank you. I just learned something new from you. Thank you. I didn't realize that.
Well, yeah, it's the first lesson they teach you in journalism school. The who, what, when, where, and why, my friend. So I should plaster that somewhere on my office door so I can remember them, okay?
All right.
Absolutely, my friend. And you mentioned to me that you view the world and people and culture relations are defined by three core elements, my friend. So I'm wondering if we can explore them this morning.
I would love that.
Yeah, so whenever you're ready, we can explore those elements, starting with being co-creators and better systems that build partnerships, my friend, and bridges rather, and create no walls. What do you think is the key there, my friend?
So what I would say there is it's so important to we I think we were talking about collaboration earlier as well. And
Yeah.
so that's such a key when we talk about building bridges, not walls. A lot of what happens in the workplace is unintentionally, right? There's a lot of bias out there. And so we end up excluding people unintentionally. We hoard knowledge, and then that doesn't allow us to really fully bring the person and allow them to bring their full skill sets and talents. It doesn't allow creativity or innovation. And so what happens a lot of times is it's, oh, that's sales, that's marketing, that's HR, or departments like HR become the catch-all bucket versus how do we really open up these conversations, right? Like build a bridge, walk the bridge, and it can start with inviting other groups to your department meetings and having a speaker talk about a topic that you can ask your team what are they interested in learning more about. And I've seen this done so well. I've practiced this myself, and folks love it because it invites inclusion. And it's also then not just the leader saying, oh, here's what we're going to do, right? We've invited the team and their opinions on that. So one of the things I love to do with my clients is to really help them understand that it is a partnership. In HR, we talk a lot about HR business partnership because we have to have the business acumen and care about their business in order to best support them as thought leaders.
Yeah, and let's talk about removing biases when making decisions and striving for a strategic partner in all areas of the organization or as stakeholders. What do you think is the key there?
Yeah, I think, a lot of it is a lot of what we talked about already, Kevin, in terms of making sure that we aren't making assumptions. And what happens too, particularly in areas of performance management or, areas of giving feedback, we are so quickly to say, we need this performance, we need this person to do this. And we haven't asked enough questions. We haven't explored those whys, we haven't maybe gotten all the context or facts before trying to solve the problem already. And so things that can happen, there's a bias called recency bias. And a lot of times, if something has recently happened, then it gets attached to that person and their personal or professional brand and their performance review at times. So really, it just requires, I would say, us to pause and not just assume that everything we know in our heads at that moment is what we know. The thing is, we're all biased as humans. So we have to have these filters and interventions in order for us not to come to the table with bias.
Yeah, and Tiffany, this is my personal favorite because it talks about empowering leaders while illuminating a strategic path forward. So I'm curious if we could take the last one through the lens of really making sure that those that are in charge of leading and those that are in charge of following are really creating a collaborative path forward because I believe that if employees have a stake in the game or an investment on how an organization is run, they're more apt to give their full self to the job. Would you agree with that?
100. Actually, we're going to sign it more than 100%. I definitely agree. I think that that is such a powerful question too, because it is a collaborative and it should be a co-created space. So in order for employees to feel like they're psychologically safe in an environment, that means they have to be invited to have perspective. They have to feel like their voice matters. They have to feel like they matter in the work environment. And so often, it is just that leaders are coming in and telling everyone what to do, but they're not inviting the perspectives. Your employees were hired for a reason, and teams really can innovate when you bring them together, when there's collaboration, and even that collaboration we talked about that's outside of, maybe your immediate area. There's still a lot of silos in organizations, and that is not good for progress and innovation in an organization and giving it a competitive edge. And so I think, your question is a very rich one. And I would say explore with your teams what is possible. Yes, of course, as leaders, we have to set the way and set the vision. But why would you not invite those who are on your team to be a part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Tiffany, I'm interested to ask you about setting the gold standard in the industry. And what initial questions do you personally ask when someone is considering working with you or have access to sort of the seriousness in regards to such a proclamation by setting the gold standard in an industry? What sort of questions do you ask yourself when you initially agree to work with a client? And conversely, what questions should organizations ask themselves if they're interested in setting the gold standard?
I really appreciate that. I think that, I love that you called it a proclamation because I remember going through this process with the woman who I was working with, from a marketing perspective, and I was like, "This is kind of a bold claim, but that's how I roll." And I also was like, "If we want to," and this is my mindset around it. If we want to create the workplaces of the future, which really, right, is here and now, our employees are demanding different things, in good ways. They're pushing us to be better. And so, what I would say to that is when I'm looking at working with a client, we do vet our clients through a formal process, and we look at what are people saying about them online, what is really going on in terms of what's actually going on in the environment. We take a look at their social media. We look at any articles or things that are there to celebrate. We take a look at whether they have job openings and things like that. We want to see, are they an inclusive employer? Do they care about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, even if they're early on in their journey? But do they care about people? Are they doing and saying the right things? Now, when I say right, I mean in the element of caring about people first and wanting to be strategic. Those are some of the things that we think about when we work with a client. When we're looking at an organization to help move them towards a gold standard, we are, as we're doing everything runs through a DEIB filter. If we are doing a handbook, there's a lot of gendered language out there still. Even in our process, it's about how co-creative are those folks with us? Are they treating us as true partners? Because if they're working with us and they're giving us the information that we need, and they are looking at data and they want data to drive decisions versus this is how I feel today. And so I'm going to assign this action to this person. And there is no real intentionality behind it. Intentionality is another piece of what we deem a gold standard. Folks who understand that we're connecting it to the values, we're saying what we mean, and we're helping other people understand what we mean by connecting them and their roles and responsibilities into the strategies of the organization, but as humans first. And those are some of the things that we really think about and encourage and empower organizations to, so that they can make their way to that gold standard.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tiffany, there's a sign in my office that says life in business is a constant game of networking. And I know that you believe that creating meaningful relationships is the way to create creative solutions, my friend. So tell me about the importance of creating meaningful relationships within an organization and how it can lead to coming up with some creative solutions. What are your thoughts there?
I really love that. And I love a good sign. I have them at my house and my office too. So, my friend, we are alike there. I definitely also think that everything starts with relationships. It personal relationships, professional relationships. When my spouse and I go to the grocery store, we like to use people's names. I have people, friends, and colleagues who will do the same if we're out for a business lunch or other things. Those things matter. It all boils down to treating the person as a person, and understanding that for me, I I can have a surface level conversation with someone, but I am just so overjoyed and it lights me up and fills my cup to have deep, meaningful conversations with folks to explore who they are, even if they may look like me, even if, I may assume that they're in my same gender, even if they're another small business owner, we really have to get past and down to the root of who each other are and explore that and understand that those perspectives and the things we pick up in conversations like you and I are having today to really understand. And that makes for deep, meaningful relationships. When people feel like you're actually invested, they feel seen, heard, valued, and appreciated. That is the key to a very, very meaningful relationship, and I dare say a good friendship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you're also a large component for interactive approaches that empower individuals by leveraging their expertise and maintaining their decision making, my friend. So, how do we develop a level of trust while also allowing the decision making process to be interactive? What are your thoughts there?
I love that. And I think that, even as we're talking, I'm learning things about journalism. You and I have some similarities in terms of things that we may know, how we approach some values, but we're two different people. And so when we come to a situation, even if we think someone's in the same industry as us, we have to explore what may be underneath because each of us brings something individual to that. And so I think, in that space, we have to understand that decisions happen all day. They happen super quickly. Our brains move very quickly, faster than we can keep up with them. And even that depends on ability, right? So understanding what that looks like for folks while giving them the respect to make a decision. And if you maybe disagree with that, maybe you just ask a question about it. But that's why in our work we explore and we call it co-creation. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I can help guide your decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tiffany, as you know from doing your research on me, I was born with cerebral palsy, and I found out at the age of 9, my friend, that I would not be able to walk for the duration of my life because of the severity of my cerebral palsy. So I've made it my life mission and professional mission to talk to organizations about building an inclusive culture with minimal effort and embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the full integration of folks with disabilities into the workforce. Because when I graduated college almost 15 years ago now, I was rejected by 10 consecutive news directors who told me at the time that because of my disability, they refused to hire me because they didn't think they had enough resources within the newsroom to support me adequately, my friend. So tell me, when we look at hiring folks with disabilities, what sort of competitive advantage can they bring to the workforce?
Yes, it is. I mean, first they get to meet lovely, delightful, talented folks like you. I have enjoyed this conversation, but it's beyond that, right? It is really brings so much creativity. And I think it also starts with understanding that you have to have a posting that makes that person want to apply. If I don't see myself represented in the job posting and I don't feel like it's inclusive or it doesn't seem to really call me in and speak to my values, then I'm not going to want to join that workforce. And the other piece of that is make it what you just shared with me, Kevin, lets me know that there were a lot of assumptions made. And a lot of times where I see employers veer off here is that they assume that they need to make an accommodation. They haven't asked and invited someone like you what that looks like. How do I best support you versus making assumptions that this is going to be costly? I'm not going to be able to do it. And it's putting those limiting beliefs on the person and the system, and you're losing top talent that could help your organization grow through that diversity and bringing about that equity.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tiffany, I'm also curious to ask you about findings from Fortune magazine that reported last year that 84% of executives and 81% of HR leaders overestimate the quality of their company culture, my friend. So I'm curious, when you hear those numbers and hear those findings, my friend, what comes to mind, and how do you think we can continue to constantly strengthen organizational culture? What are your thoughts there?
Ooh, that is it's like, yeah, I had to take a breath. It feels a little daunting, I would say, but it's also a dose of reality. I live in, it's a both and, right? We have to be grounded in the data and the reality that we talked about. But, this just speaks to how we have to let go of some of our ego. We have to understand that we don't have to know it all. That those are high numbers, right? To really think that we're doing something and maybe not. But it begs us back to, let's ask the questions. Let's slow down. Let's find out if we're getting it right. And so many times, even during implementation, let's say you're implementing a software and you get to the end, people are like, okay, check, the box is done. We've done that. It happens with diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging as well. We have to understand that this is a continuous cycle. It's why they call it the employee life cycle. Culture is dynamic. It's not a set it and forget it. We just revised our company values last year. And that is not because they've changed at their core, but we always must be iterating because nothing is ever perfect. And the very systems and organizations that we work and live in are dynamic and changing. And if we don't keep up with that, then we lose our competitive advantage. And then how can you be a gold standard company if you are thinking, 84%, you think it's better than it is?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one final statistic from Fortune that I wanted to get your thoughts on. They also reported last year that over 90% of North American CEOs and CFOs believe that improving their corporate culture will also improve their financial performance, my friend. So I'm curious, what are your initial thoughts upon hearing those statistics, my friend?
Well, I think that those are very savvy leaders. It is true. We spend a lot of money hiring. We spend a lot of time training. We spend a lot of time immersing people into the corporate culture, hopefully, and also while letting that individual bring their full selves and not just trying to shove them in a box. I have experienced that myself. So it really is, about retention. And you can't have an engaged team and expect to retain your team if you're not pouring into them, whether that's professional development, inviting their ideas, and creating an environment that works for them. Not everyone, there's this joke about beer and ping pong and pizza and happy hour that we use a lot in HR and culture work and people and culture work. And it's because a lot of times people make those events or you feel forced to go to those events. Well, what if I'm a caregiver or I'm a parent or I just like to go run after work and that's my time to decompress? What if I don't drink alcohol and now that's the only thing that's at this party, right? So we want to just really be inclusive and thoughtful when we're doing that. And even those little things add up because it starts to build a story in an employee's mind. And it's that story is saying, am I staying here or am I leaving here?
Tiffany, if I made you a professor of a bunch of HR leaders who were starting their first day on the job, and I told you the course was all about helping HR leaders understand the importance of inclusive decision making, my friend. What sort of or what three core principles would you begin telling this group of newly appointed HR leaders about the importance of inclusive decision making? What are your thoughts there?
I love that. I didn't know I was getting promotion today too, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I
I'll
think
take 15% of your commission, okay? No, I'm only kidding.
Um, I think, it starts with those relationships that we talked about. We have to understand that we have to build a relationship and be in relationship with each other. It's also about collaboration and exploration. We want to be understanding those different perspectives and pulling from those perspectives so that we can invite and create the workplaces of the future. We have to explore the person, we have to explore our data, and we have to explore and not be afraid to take some calculated risks along the way to understand what went right, and what is going right, and maybe make a few assumptions about what could go wrong, anticipate that, and be the leaders of the future through that exploration, by inviting those voices. And I think those are three top things that I've seen work really well in my own leadership, as well as those that I work with and who work in other organizations.
Yeah, and just very quickly, I know that you serve on the board of two nonprofits, my friend, and you were awarded the Deficit Award in 2022. So, congratulations, which is one of
Thank
the
you.
country's most prestigious honors for volunteerism and leadership, my friend. So, tell me, what do those honors mean to you in terms of your commitment to community service, and why do you think more leaders should make a more forceful commitment when it comes to community service? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, whew, first of all, I got the chills, because I am so passionate about community and volunteerism, and I have been volunteering since I was a little girl, and I will continue to do it as I think about the legacy I want to leave behind. And this award was really part of that, because what it speaks to is not just, oh, look at me, I have this award, is this is the impact and the impression that I have left on the world. These are the people's lives that I've touched. And so I think how it relates to leadership too is with this award, we talk about not just community service and community and service at people, right? It's service with people. What do they actually need? And that's the same thing with leadership. You don't want to force people into something without understanding what they actually need. How do you build a gold standard culture and an engaged, supportive, psychologically safe culture without understanding what the people actually need? You can't. And so I think even when we look at causes that your employees could volunteer for, right? That we should be inviting their opinions there. But yeah, I'm really proud of that. But it's because of the lives that were impacted by it.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. Well, I have to tell you, I serve on two boards and I serve on four nonprofit committees. So we have a kinship on community service and volunteerism. And I'm also suffering, Tiffany, from an inability to say no. But I promise I am getting better, okay?
Oh, okay. We can work on that together and be accountability partners. I'm getting
Absolutely.
better at it too.
Absolutely. My new motto in life is if it's not in my schedule, I don't agree to do it, right?
I like that.
Yes.
See, we're learning together. I'm keeping that one.
I absolutely. My staff reminds me of that on a daily and we sometimes hourly basis, but that's okay. My final question for you, Tiffany, this morning has to do with your life and legacy, my friend. If I told you I was going to throw you $1 million lifetime achievement party, and the only thing I wanted from you was to select the people that knew you best, whether it be your family members or those that you work with or your best friends. And I asked them to give you a lifetime achievement toast, my friend. What do you think you would want them to say about your life and your legacy, my friend?
I would want them to say that I built bridges, as we've talked about, Kevin. I think that connection and spending time in relationship with each other and building those things is something I have spent my lifetime doing. And it's something that I have been celebrated for. And I want to continue to be celebrated for. And not just because it feels good to me, we know it feels good to give, but because it's impacting other people's lives, because I'm able to bring them together so that they can build partnerships, so that they can build successful businesses and build themselves. I always want people to be the best versions of themselves, and I'm striving to do that myself every single day. So that would be the party of a lifetime, and I'd be feeling very grateful for that. I'm feeling even a little emotional thinking and talking about that.
Yeah, and you sparked me to ask one final follow-up question, Tiffany, because it's one of the reasons I started this podcast 4 years ago. I looked at the world and I said that there has to be more that brings us together than tears us apart, my friend. So how do you think we build more bridges of unity within the walls of organizations? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I think it starts with general principles that we hopefully, depending on our background, our lived experience, right? But that most of us got in school and understanding how we can connect to each other. We are so interconnected and we need each other as humans. We have to understand that each of us is different, but just bringing humanity back to the fold, I believe is the key to so many things. And I really believe that that is where things start treating each other as a human first before we seek to get something from that person, before we make assumptions about that person. I think that that is the key to moving DEIB forward as well.
Absolutely, my friend. Well, I have to tell you, this was a delightful conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion, my friend. I think you're doing outstanding work in this space. And
Thank you.
finally, I want to know if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Yes, well, I do love a good conversation and meeting new folks and hanging out with my existing folks. I would say you can look for me on LinkedIn. I believe I'm the only Tiffany Castagno there. I love to invite new connections and explore new relationships.
Well, I have to tell you, that's how we met, my friend. And
Yes.
LinkedIn's a powerful tool for networking, isn't it?
Oh, it is. So that's a note. Get out there and get on LinkedIn and build those bridges.
And don't be afraid to go for what you want in the organizational culture world, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, my friend, I believe that you're a true ambassador of change in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was a real privilege for me to spend a few minutes talking to you about something I know that we're mutually passionate about, my friend. So I want to tell you to keep up the good work. And I'm really fortunate and thankful that you agreed to spend a couple of minutes engaging in conversation with me this morning. It's most appreciated.
Likewise, Kevin. Thank you. This has been lovely. Thank you for supporting me, for your kind words, and for being in my corner.